Welcome everybody. We are speaking today with Rob Black. Rob is a leader in the Omaha Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service. He's actually the liaison to the Executive Council of the Omaha Bar Association. And Rob has been in town for a number of years in solo practice, but he's down in Bellevue area in Sarpy County, and we haven't spoken with anybody with the Sarpy County solo side of things, and so we thought we'd bring in Rob. You're having some camera difficulties, which is fine, but we have you on the line so we can hear you loud and clear. Thanks for being on.
Absolutely, Dave. And as I told you beforehand, maybe it's better that people don't actually see my face. They just hear my lovely voice.
Well, and I'm sitting here with the crazy hair today, so they at least have something amusing to look at here. So can you give us a background on your journey to Omaha and starting your practice here and how it's been?
Sure. So I graduated from law school in 2006 at Ave Maria School of Law, so out of state here, and joined the Air Force straight out of law school as a JAG. I was active duty for 8 years, and my last assignment was here at Offutt. My wife was from Lincoln, so we kind of had the idea that may be the end of the road for us in our time on active duty. And we were right. We decided just to punch to be able to stay here closer to family. I remained as a traditional guardsman in the Iowa Air National Guard, and continuing to be a JAG there. But I decided to just step out and hang a shingle and give the solo life a try, being a civilian attorney.
And at the time you did that, did you have any idea of what you were getting into? Did you have maybe a mentor or somebody that you were looking to sort of follow in their footsteps or anything like that?
I had zero idea what I was doing. I look back on it. And with being able to look at it now, 6+ years in retrospect, and I was so naive. And I think you kind of have to be a solo. Halfway courageous, halfway naive, right? And so I stepped out, and I had a couple of people. I didn't really have one primary mentor. I had a couple of people that helped me along the way. My guard boss was able to give me a couple of pointers. He was a member of the OBA, encouraged me to join the OBA and kind of get to know some people there. I also met up with a very gracious attorney in Bellevue. And even though she practiced in a very different area of law than me, was open to me having office space and renting from her. So she was just a fantastic person and a great attorney to be around. So, I wouldn't really say that I had one mentor. That was one bit of advice that people always gave. As you go out, you have to have a mentor. And well, it's not always easy. I mean, everybody's time is limited, and it's tough, especially if you've got some experience. People assume that you know what you're doing as a business person or as a solo, and it's a little bit more difficult to find a mentor. But you don't want to impose on people, right? And ask too much of them. And at the same time, all of us, whenever you're going into something new, really need help. So I benefited from a lot of different people, and to varying degrees, and I'm real grateful for that.
So with your background in JAG and opening your own office, what strengths do you have coming in, and how did you build that book of business?
Boy, the strengths that I had were primarily my skills, particularly for trial. So I gained a lot of litigation experience, and I kind of hoped that would transition over to the civilian practice, and in some ways it had. But obviously, learning a new system and kind of the unwritten rules is something that you really have to go just plunge into. As far as building a book of business, boy, I really had very few personal contacts here, even in Omaha, much less professional contacts whenever I stepped out. So just very few. So I started out, joined the Omaha Bar Association's lawyer referral service right away. And that's kind of why I got into LRS and serving on the board there, and being active with OBA, particularly as it concerns LRS, because I really saw what value it gave somebody, like in my situation, where you're just getting basically people who are looking for an attorney, and are going to call you up and actually pay you money. And funny story, I even went to some nonprofits in the area here to donate my services, to just see if they would be willing to just give me clients for free, and that I can handle, just to kind of gain experience. And I had a real hard time even getting them to call me back to get clients to me. In fact, I received no referrals from them, even offering to work for free. So here's the LRS, and they say, hey, we'll get you, occasional clients, a few clients a year, and we'll actually, you can arrange, if you come into a fee agreement with them and the situation works for both of you, you can get paid for this. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good deal. And LRS has continued to be a really good deal for me and my practice.
Yeah. And as you've built your practice, you have a website. You have a really good website. I mean, I haven't talked about that with any of the past people on, but as a solo in 2021, you need to have that online digital presence, right?
Yeah, I built a website, but some people I know have focused a lot on search engine optimization, SEO. I actually never really delved into that too much, and into paying for that, and Google AdWords. I went with a service out there, and there's one of many. So this isn't particularly a plug for them, but Avo is one that's out there. And the biggest thing that I did with Avo to stay engaged was, I mean, some paying them a little bit for marketing, but it was mostly being able to have a forum for clients to review me. And honestly, I think that's been one of the biggest things that has helped to grow business, because on my webpage now, I have it linked to my Avo reviews, and I have real clients leaving real reviews about work that I've done for them. And thankfully they're all good reviews. And I think that's one big thing, is that you can't, I never really got into the some of the things, like you get the offers for 40 top lawyers under 40 and whatever else, and it seems like you can pay people and get a designation as being one of the best attorneys out there. And I just never really cared for that. What really mattered to me was first doing a good job for people, and then providing, the way that you toot your own horn as you provide an opportunity for them to leave a review for you. And so I was very diligent. I've tried to really remain diligent with that over the last 6 years, following up with people after their case is over to say, hey, here's where you can go leave a review for me. And I get people that, call me up still, clients that are out looking for an attorney, or even if they're referred to me from somebody else, they're going to go check out reviews first, like everybody else does. So whether it's Avo or Google, your Google page, wherever, I would really recommend, whenever you do a good job, toot your own horn to a degree, but encourage other people to toot your horn, right? Like your clients, once you do a good job, because that's what people want to know. What are past clients' experiences like with this attorney?
So you're on the other side of the border. You're in Sarpy County. What's different down there in Sarpy County practice than in Omaha for solo
Well,
in particular?
I guess I should have said my main areas of practice are criminal defense, and I do some civil litigation whenever there are, as the military would say, targets of opportunity. Whenever the right case comes up that I feel comfortable taking, and that seems like a case that suits me for a client that suits me. And I was in Sarpy County for 4 years,
Oh,
I
right. You
actually
don't
moved.
office down there anymore, do you? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no. I moved up to Omaha, but I still have quite a few Sarpy contacts and get down to the Sarpy courts there pretty regularly. So how is Sarpy different? Well, Douglas County is, I mean, anybody that's been in there knows what kind of a grind it is, just simply from the number of cases that are needed to churn through. And so some things are expedited, simpler, I would guess, in some respects. And that's both a strength, and I think I think also a strength of Sarpy County is that they can take a little bit more time with cases, and maybe devote a little bit more individualized attention to it. I wouldn't say, I've been out to some of the smaller counties around the area, and there's definitely a different feel there from both Douglas and Sarpy. Like you feel the number of cases that both Douglas and Sarpy have to process, but Sarpy County is. I mean, if anybody's been to the layout of the courthouses, it's has kind of a more, how should I say, more of like a modern, softer feel to it somehow than Douglas County, and the kinds of cases that they're putting through there aren't usually. I mean, you have the large number of murders and just intense things that go on in Douglas County. And you get some cases of that nature in Sarpy County, but overall, it just doesn't have quite that same intensity that Douglas County does. Both areas, of course, have a high level of professionalism within the courts, but it is a different way of having to operate, both in dealing with the prosecutors and dealing with the judges. You get a flavor of that even just by entering the buildings.
And they still have, and this, I guess this is for civil cases, they still have like a day of the week where they hear their motions, right? That basically there's the cattle call, which is legend in Douglas County, but hasn't happened for years. But they still have that sort of you're going to see all your fellow attorneys on, I think it's maybe Tuesday or something like that, down there, where there's a bit more. If you want to learn something, if you want to get a feel, you kind of have a day to go in and sort of see that motion practice, I think.
Yeah. I and like I said, I don't do as much civil work really. Even the civil work that I do has been, I guess, almost as much in federal court as it's been in state court. So, which is, federal court's an entirely different kettle of fish. But yeah, when you talk about that, Dave, just being able to go sit in, that was one thing that I did whenever I started off as well, was just go and just sit in the back of the courtroom and just watch. It's tough to carve out time to do that when you're thinking about marketing and everything else, but you can get back and you can just kind of observe. And I found that to be valuable for me, both in Sarpy and in Douglas. So, the first time that I'm walking in with a real client, it's not, total shell shock, being overwhelmed by the way things are run. You just kind of get a sense of things beforehand. So if somebody is a new attorney or a new solo stepping out into a heavy litigation practice like criminal defense, I would definitely recommend that to them.
Yeah. We've covered a lot of stuff here that hasn't been covered by the other presenters. So this is very helpful. And I know you're going into a hearing here soon, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. But is there anything, looking back on it, that you tell yourself 6 years ago, some words of advice, some things to focus on or avoid?
Yeah, I would say be bold. That there's nothing wrong with being bold, and respectful to people. Those things have worked out for me. In some ways, I wish I was even bolder in some areas, and I think there's room for that. Nobody that is in the legal community wants somebody to come out acting like a jerk, and there's definitely a difference between being bold and being a jerk. So I think kind of understanding your place, getting a sense of your place, but also having confidence in your training, where you've come from, and being willing to take that confidence and push forward for your clients and for yourself and your business. um, I would commend that to anyone.
One thing I haven't asked, and I think it's really important these days, do you have a management software system that you use?
No, my management software system is Windows, so
Fair
that's
enough.
that's really what I use. I keep track of all my clients through just internal forms that I've created, and yeah, that's really what's done it for me. So
And we've run the gamut, and there are certainly other attorneys that I've been interviewing that have the same system. It's their system. It's not a third party system or anything like that. Just curious to see
yeah.
in your experience. Well, I don't have any other questions. Anything else that you want to mention? If not, we can let you go and get you to hearing.
Oh, I just recommend to anybody to join lawyer referral service if you're starting out, like I talked about, and stay involved with the OBA. It's just a good way to get to know people and come out if you're any good at softball and join us in beating the Douglas County prosecutors. We like to do that once a year. Once COVID's off, we'll get back to that. And
It's always a guaranteed pulled hamstring by somebody, or quad or hamstring when they're rounding the bases. I know that for sure.
yeah,
That's
I
always good.
usually end up with a strawberry or two on my legs after sliding into the bases, but
Sliding in shorts.
right.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob. Really appreciate it, and good luck at your hearing.
Thanks, Dave. All right, have a good day.
You too. Bye bye. All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Thanks everybody for joining us. We are here today with Jamie Hermansen. Jamie is a solo practice attorney, one of my good friends, and she practices in GAL and appointment cases in juvenile law, and her perspective on solo practice, I think, is a really good one to have for those who are looking to maybe get into the practice and how to build their book of business. So, Jamie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having me, Dave.
So, just as a starting point, can you give us just kind of the journey, into solo practice and through those first few years of solo practice?
Sure. Yeah, I've been practicing for about 5 years, a little bit more than that now. I started out as a solo practitioner, and it wasn't really a thought out plan. It was more just kind of, I stumbled into it. My husband works for Union Pacific, and he has a really weird schedule. So when I started, I was like, I'm never going to see him, because he had Tuesday, Wednesdays off at the time. So I was like, well, I'll just start taking some cases and see how it goes. I had very few bills at the time, so I was like, oh, I don't know how much to lose. So I also was a mediator already. So I was affiliated with a couple centers, and I was working in Dodge County at a mediation center there. And so it was like, I just will start taking some cases. I started taking them in Dodge County first, and then have expanded to Douglas County, and I live in Douglas County. And I started out just doing strictly juvenile law. Started out doing mostly juvenile work. And I've expanded since then. I do a lot within juvenile now. I do GAL work, obviously, but I also represent parents and do a lot of different roles in juvenile law. And now I do practice in a lot of different areas too. So it was just kind of something I fell into, and then it's continued to work. And now I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, well, you built a successful practice from the ground up, and it's very commendable. One thing that we haven't talked about yet, and I've recorded a few of these, but the appointment system is fairly simple, and the important thing is you're getting clients that are paying. The state, the county is paying you to represent these people, and there are different rates for different counties and different type of work. But can you talk a little bit about how you started getting appointments, and maybe if you know some of the rates for the county, so people can actually understand what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, the rates are different, and it depends on what you're doing too. Douglas County varies in what your appointment is, on what the rate is. in juvenile, they just raised it to 75 in Douglas County. In Dodge County, it also varies on what type of law you're practicing. Juvenile is 75 there as well, and criminal appointments are 95 in Dodge County.
Discrimination, come on. The kids are
Well,
important too.
actually, that's been brought up by a few attorneys in Dodge County to me, so I won't go into that, but that is something that has been brought up, but I'm fine with it. I've been told by some other attorneys that court appointments are a good way to keep the lights on, the reference, and it definitely has expanded my practice, and it's allowed me to become knowledgeable and get experience. And then I started taking criminal defense appointments, and it just has built my confidence as an attorney and learning kind of how to manage cases and practice basically. And I don't know how I would have gotten that without court appointments. I do take private clients now in different areas, but it all started with court appointments. And I still take court appointments. As you said, it's consistent and they always pay you. So yeah, overall, it's a really good thing.
The mediation, can you talk a bit about what sort of training's involved and how that could be a good avenue for a new solo practitioner?
Yeah, I started out as a mediator. So I did there's two types of training that you have. Well, it depends on, I guess, what type of mediation. Sorry, I'll back up a little bit. If you want to be a family mediator, a parenting act mediator, you have to go through basic mediation training. It's provided by the Nebraska Mediation Association. And then you have to do a parenting act mediator training. And both of those, when I took them, they were a week straight. I think they've changed some of that. I've talked to some of the mediators that one of my friends runs the center in Fremont now, and she said that they're doing it on Fridays and they just last a month or something like that. But there is quite a bit of training, and then you have to have hours shadowing a mediator. So there is quite a bit of training that goes into it. But that's how I started. I took the bar exam in February and was waiting my results, and then actually went and affiliated with some of the centers. And that is kind of how because I also offer private mediation, and that's how I got started in that as well. And doing full-blown divorce mediations. You can do child support calculations, and you can do property division. You have to be an attorney, obviously, to do that, but not all mediators are attorneys. So non-attorney mediators can mediate parenting plans.
And I mean, you believe in the process of mediating things out instead of going to trial and everything, right? I mean, you're not just a practitioner, you're a believer.
Yes, and even in my practice, I would say that's true. I try to be really honest with my clients. I do some family law, not a lot. I do some limited scope work. I'm the section chair of the limited scope section for the Nebraska State Bar, and I do some family law. I'd say it's limited, very particular on what cases I will take in that. But sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh yes, I am a believer in the mediation process, and also a member of the Nebraska Collaborative Divorce Group. So I just see better results from people when they're not litigating it. It just seems like a better process to me.
Yeah, well, and limited scope, haven't talked about that before in this series, but it is something that solo should look into as a way to get clients that wouldn't necessarily be wanting a full retainer. Maybe it turns into a full representation, but just doing paperwork for clients in areas that maybe you have some experience in. Going in cold, not knowing the area, that might be a little tricky. You kind of have to know what you're getting into, but I think it's for solos. I think it's a great add-on.
Yeah, it just kind of adds another avenue that you can practice in. And I agree with you. You should definitely know some of what you're doing. It's not like you are not representing them. So you are representing them in the areas that you've agreed to represent them in. So you still need to be knowledgeable and competent in those areas of law. Yeah. But it is limited in what you are doing for them. And it is a way for people to access lawyers that couldn't afford a full retainer or just don't want to go down that route. And sometimes it does turn into a full-blown representation. Those tend to be the family law cases that I end up having, as I agree to do them on a limited scope basis, and then they turn into full-blown clients, which is fine. That happens, and but it is a nice avenue to get clients and also get your name out there. I get referrals from other attorneys that just don't do that type of work. So it's been nice.
So if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself 6 years ago when you started this, what would you say? Words of advice, pitfalls to avoid?
No, I think I would have just told myself to just, I went in very slowly, which is a good thing, I think, overall, because I never got too big too fast. I never took on more than I felt like I could really take. So I think that there is something to be said for that. But I was very timid at first. I was only taking just the cases that I really knew exactly what I was doing. And I think I would just tell myself to be a little bit braver at first and maybe try to mentor. I never really had a true mentor, and I think that would be valuable. But I've had a lot of attorneys that have helped me along the way. It's not that people have been unkind. I've had a lot of friends and other attorneys that have really been helpful.
And we were just talking about this before we started recording. Your setup is you don't have a support staff person helping you out, even though desperately could use one. You said, because you're so busy. Could you talk a bit about the business side? It sounds like less overhead is more money in your pocket, and that's kind of the approach you've taken.
Yeah, that's how I started out, was keeping my overhead really low. So it didn't really matter how many cases, I was getting. It wasn't as stressful. I didn't have, a $7,000 a month lease, or I didn't have people to support, people that were depending on me. That was kind of what I started out as. And I really should hire someone at this point, even part-time. A support staff it would really help my practice. I just have not gotten to the point where I know who to hire or trust someone they would have access to my calendar, and I would be depending on them to get me to court on, at the right time. And it's just a kind of scary leap for me, but I really probably should do that at the point.
Well, the last question I have, and we've chatted about this in the past, is your sort of evolution to really believing that you're worth the invoices that you're sending out to your clients, and that they need to pay, and it's a no nonsense, I'm going to do this and hope that you pay me. It's sort of just valuing yourself more as an attorney. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you use the right word there, of evolution of that. It's a constant battle, because I'm really empathetic and I care a lot about people, which is probably why I got into the practice of law. So that side of me is like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'll reduce my rate, or it's okay, I won't take a retainer. You can't afford it. And I've gotten over that, because clients tend to not respect that, and they still are equally as demanding as my clients that are paying me. So I've really started to put my foot down on that. I won't do things without a retainer. It just doesn't make sense, and I have to value my time and all of my clients, and it's just not right. So that is something that has been a struggle, but it's coming around. Still a work in progress.
And it makes you sleep easier at night too, right? I mean,
That is true.
The problem client, you're not saying that they're a problem client and I'm not charging them for all of this, because that's just a double whammy that, boy, I lost a lot of night's sleep over that when I was in my very failing solo practice. So, well, Jamie, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything I missed that you wanted to get out to the potential solos that are looking at this, law students or attorneys in practice that are looking to make a change?
No, I think you asked a lot of really good questions. If anyone has questions for me, I'd be happy to talk to somebody.
Appreciate it. Well, good luck with the rest of your day. I know you're busy and you have hearings and everything like that. So have a good rest of the day, and hopefully one of these days we'll see you in person.
Yeah, that would be
We
great.
can
That
do
would be
it.
ideal.
All right. Bye, Jamie. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Well, welcome back to Solo School, everybody. Dave Summers. I'm here with Barry Grossman. Barry has been a longtime OBA member. He is a member of the Lawyer Referral Service. He's taught many, many years at Creighton University for law practice management. And he's taught down in Lincoln with their business school, basically the legal program within the business school. Is that right?
Actually, I never taught at UNL. I taught at Creighton as their adjunct for, on and off for 20 years. And then when I was working as the head of a paralegal department for a for-profit school that became Kaplan, but I'd worked for 25 years. But while I was doing that and practicing, I worked at Creighton, and I also worked with the paralegal program in Lincoln because that was our sister school. So
okay, well, there's a lot of years of education in the law, which
a lot of stuff
is great because I think you understand what's being taught and what's not being taught. The students have their 3 years of law school, but the basics of how to get out there and practice day to day, sometimes they're not getting to that, and that's what you were sort of bridging that gap, and that's sort of your work was the impetus for this program to start, because I thought more and more we need to tell people what it's like in solo practice. And
that's great. Yeah.
so we'll just give a little bit of background. What areas of practice do you do? And
so for many years, I did a lot of stuff. I did personal injury for many years. I did bankruptcy up to this year, but I didn't do it. I used to do it. My father was an attorney for 50 some years before he retired. And I actually was blessed to have a relative in the business. And so my plan was when I got out of law school, I was going to, I was just going to go into practice with my dad and other attorneys that worked with him, which is what I did. But he did a lot of bankruptcy, did a lot of domestic, did a lot of appellate work, some PI stuff. But as the years have changed, for some odd reason, my niche seems to be family law and guardianships, and I actually enjoy those quite a bit. So I decided when my dad retired, he told me never to do criminal defense, but I started dabbling in that, and I realized that I actually kind of enjoy that too. I don't get those cases as much, but when I get one, I certainly like to chew on it because that's kind of fun. But most of my stuff is domestic.
And in your work, is it just you, or do you have a support staff or anything like that?
So I've always done stuff myself. I've had paralegals that worked for me before. I've had in and out. I've had people help me, but for the most part, most of my cases I do. There's another attorney in my office, Barb Prince, who is, to me, probably the smartest attorney, one of the smartest attorneys in the state. I mean, she's phenomenal and very, very humble. But when I have any type of questions involving appellate work, she's the one. She's worked in the appellate court before. When she got out of law school, she clerked, I think, for Judge Irwin, and she's the person to go. So Barb and I have kind of worked, it's a shared office space, but we've worked together on cases now for probably, I would say, 7 or 8 years. And we just really work well together. She doesn't do a whole bunch of domestic, so she comes to me. So we have these bullshit sessions once every couple of weeks, and we throw out stuff that we normally can't find via case maker or statutes, whatever. So yeah, it's nice to have somebody there you can bounce ideas off of. And that would be one big thing that I'd want to suggest to people that want to be a solo practitioner, you still have to have that go-to.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody about, hey, what do you feel? How do you feel about this? Thankfully, the Bar Association now has, we have the listservs that really, really help quite a bit. And those have helped me in the past, and I think they'll continue to do so. We didn't have that kind of support when I was around. I mean, I had to resort to talking to people around me, but I would still suggest people do that.
And it's been a recurring theme when I've done these interviews is you are a solo, you are by yourself, but you aren't. You need to have
Oh,
people
absolutely.
that you're bouncing things off of, that you're working with, that you're sharing. They do these cases, you do these cases.
Right.
Yeah.
And I try to make myself available for other people who have helped me, because I think that's the thing, is to be a legal community is to be a community. If the goal is to practice law in such a way that you can do the best you can for your client, that is an essential part of it. You've got to have people that can tell you when you're screwing up, or that you can approach and say, hey, I've never come across this before. What do I do?
Right. Right. You know, I've had a lot of these conversations, and the one thing we always talk about how to build a practice and how to find clients and sort of do that. But there's a point when you're cranking along and you may get, somebody through the door. It's a big case. It's maybe not in an area that you've practiced before. It's very tempting. Um, Maybe from experience or from other people you've talked to. Can you talk a bit about that case that you maybe shouldn't take on, or
Right.
just understanding
Right.
your limitations?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You always have to be comfortable with what you're going to take. Obviously, you want to you want to take cases if you're interested in them, you're willing to put the work in them. Absolutely. If you've never done a certain type of case before, but you've wanted to, then and you really, that's something you want to get your hands into, I think that'll come because there's so much support. There's so much practice manuals. There's so many things that you can look up and talk to people about to work on a case like that. But I had an experience probably when I would probably imagine it was 2000, maybe 1995 or something. I was helping this gentleman who I'd done many cases, different things for. He became very, very successful and moved to Florida, to the point he wanted me to move to Florida to be his attorney, to just ongoing things. I says, no, I don't want to do that. But he had a case where he was involved in a court. He was being sued on a corporate level. There were other attorneys involved, and most of them were from, big firms. And I said, and because I really wanted to help him, and because I still wanted to get his business, I said, sure. Well, I did, and thankfully, I was able to get through it, and we actually settled it. They actually dismissed the case against the plaintiff. We didn't even have to actually have to go to trial, because they realized that they just didn't have what they needed to do for a prima facie case. But I will tell you that even though we got it done, even though I got paid for my work, to this day, if I had done it over again, I would have said no.
Sure.
Just too much stress. You don't want to screw up. And if it's something that's completely beyond you ever having worked in that area before, and that you really don't want to do it, but the circumstances are such that you take it, and God knows the fee should not be the only reason you take a case, obviously. And I know that's tempting, especially for starving solo practitioners that get out there. They want to take the case because it's going to be good money. But if that's the only reason you're doing it, I would really think about it, because the headaches that you have to go through and the worry that you have about whether or not you're going to do a good job or miss something is pretty big. It's probably not really worth it.
Yeah. No, for sure. One area of practice that you do is guardianships, and we've had juvenile guardianships on here. Jamie Hermansen, Applegar, she does that. Do you do elderly people or adults that need a guardianship appointed by the court, or
I do not do that. Well, I take that back. I have. If a judge approaches me and asks me to do something involving a guardianship, I will most likely do it, because that I think is part of giving back. So yeah, I've been approached the last 10 years even being a guardian. I'll be a guardian every once in a while, depending upon what is involved, to represent a ward in a case. Absolutely. I will do those kind of things. I don't seek out those kind of cases normally, but I will take them. As a private attorney, you know, if somebody wants me to do a guardianship, I'll certainly do that. I've done my share of guardians of incapacitated as well as minors.
Yeah. I mean, as we look at the changing dynamic in the law profession and where a solo practice could fit in, I just see this elder law side of things being one that can potentially have a lot of opportunity, as well as in domestic family law, things like that. People are never going to see eye to eye when they get divorced and there's kids involved, right?
Right. And people are living longer, but their minds aren't necessarily living longer. So I think that's an evolving type of practice. And to go along with it, I would imagine advanced directives estate planning is also evolving in a way that I've never got involved in. But I think the fact that the guardianship local rules have changed so much in the last 10 years, I mean, now the paperwork that's involved is incredible, right? And as much as I would love to use this as a portal to object to certain things that we have to file, I understand why they do it, and I understand that there was an influx of all these cases where the guardian and or conservator would take advantage of their ward, so they had to come up with something. But the fact that it's an ever-changing process is good, and it needs to be. They have to realize, and I think they're doing that. I think they realize what things are working and what things are not working. And so they'll go back and say, we won't do this, or we'll change this form that you can get off the Nebraska Supreme Court website. So I think it's fluid. I think it's going to change. Domestic changes too, you know, but I don't think it changes as much.
Right. You know, there's this older guard that will talk about, you know, family law, domestic, and say, oh, this judge, you know, thinks of it this way, this judge thinks of it this way. And now you have a turnover on the court. We're in the process of turning over even more, and you have new judges coming in. And there seems to me to be less of keying to judges as opposed to here's the burden of proof, here's the law, you know, this is what they're following, and you make your case. And it's not, oh, I can, you know, I can reference this and it's gonna win me the day. There's more. You have to present and
Yeah, I think there's more consistency amongst the judges on what they require. There's still some wiggle room on what they'll allow and what they won't. But for the most part, I think judges are pretty. I think when you walk into a courtroom for a family law case, I think even if you've never practiced in front of that judge, I think you probably have a good handle on what they're going to do on certain things. And over the years, it's got to me, I mean, it's very, obviously, you know, it's very important to know that judge. It's very important to know what they're okay with and what they're not. And I always, you hear, since I had a father that was in the business, his big thing, which I told my students when I was teaching law office administration, actually all my classes that I taught, the one thing that he taught me that stuck with me for a very long time, and it actually is extremely important, is you show everyone respect. You show everybody that works around you the respect that they deserve. And you can do anything. If they're honest, if you're forthwith, if you don't play games. He told me that, he said it doesn't matter if it's obviously a Supreme Court justice or a maintenance man or woman, you know, it doesn't really matter. You have to respect them. You owe them that respect, and you can't walk in there. And it's not that I see that a lot anymore. I see, for the most part, I think the members of the bar are great people to work with. I think that I remember there was a time where young attorneys were coming out and they weren't getting that. They weren't quite understanding that you got to work with these people, right? If you go talk to a bailiff and you're rude to that bailiff, they're not going to call you when there's a spot available for you to get in an ex parte order. I mean, it's just common sense and just it's just taking a measure of humility with the fact that you're an attorney, but you still serve people.
Right. Right.
If people if students or who or young practitioners are getting involved in doing their solo practice, if they adhere to that, they will do well.
It's a system of laws, but it's run by people, right?
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
there is wiggle room and there is gray area, and like you talk about scheduling, and they talk about lifetime to build up your respect and a moment to tear it down. But it's so true. You need to understand that, and we're getting into maybe a world where it's a bit more keyboard warrior esque, and when you're writing that letter, you're not picturing somebody that you're speaking to face, that you've seen a real person on the other side.
Right.
You're treating it like a game. You're trying to score points for your client and not what's the end all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
There's got to be a middle ground of fighting for your client, right, as much as you can on but there's a time when you tell your client, I know you're asking for this. I know you're frustrated. I know you're angry, but you have to understand that when it comes to making decisions on procedural, I'm the boss. The main goal, that's your job. You tell me what you want. But if you're going to tell me to pursue a request that I know is going to get you into trouble, I'm not going to do it, because that's not in your best interest. And it's not something you can say, well, you do it or you're violating your ethics. No, I'm not. I'm not supposed to pursue a claim that I know is fruitless and that I know. And most of my clients, I think, when they come in and they talk to me and I spend some time with them, they know that what I'm telling them is not trying to get them in the door, and I tell them that when they come in. I said, I want you to feel comfortable working with me, because I'm just not going to be a guy on the phone talking to you. I want us to work together. I want you to know a little bit about myself, and I want you to be able to trust with what I'm saying. And I tell them all the time, I am not a half full guy.
Yeah.
Even if they have a wonderful case, I'll tell them, yeah, you have a great shot at this, but understand I can't guarantee anything. And I tend to be half empty. These are the obstacles. These are the things that we have, the issues that we're going to have to get through before we get to what you want.
And that's the biggest thing. One of the maybe biggest pitfalls or potential pitfalls of a solo practice attorney is that you're talking on a regular basis with your client, and you may not understand that they're pushing you into an area that you shouldn't. What they want isn't what you should be counseling them to do, and sort of understanding that you have to set down your foot from time to time and tell them no.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've got to be able to control your client.
Yeah.
You have to be able to control your client, and sometimes that's difficult to do. But it's easier to do if you have a client that you've made a connection with and really does trust with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. That once you have that, even clients that are very, very difficult to work with are going to be more at least listening to you.
Well, and that goes with it. It behooves you to take a little extra time, even if it's not paid time at the beginning of the relationship, to set that, as opposed to wasting hours and hours and days on end down the way because you didn't sort of set that relationship properly.
Right. That's what I've noticed over the years too. That's helped my practice quite a bit. Is I am interested in this person as a person. I'm going to do what I can for them. But if I know about them, and I know, so, when somebody walks in and let's say I'm doing a criminal defense case, and they walk in and I know that their 6-year-old was having problems with school, I'm going to ask about that, because they know that I don't just care about their case, and getting paid, I care about them as a human being, and I know, and I have an idea about what's important to them. And when they, and that's why I don't, I want them to know that I'm a human being too. And so, you know, when they walk into my office, when they walk into my office, they're gonna see my license, they're gonna see my credentials, right? Everything that you have to do um, uh, ethically, but at the same time, they're gonna see a big picture of Spider-Man. I mean, the shit that you see behind me,
Oh, I
because
didn't even look at
I
that.
want them to
Wow.
know what my passions are, what I like, and because they're going to see me as a human being, they're going to see pictures of my children, of my wife, you know, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think that's been something that we've had to fight for so many years as attorneys. We've had to fight with the aspect that we're the bad guy. All we're in it is for money. You know, you hear that all the time, and that all we care about is doing the case, getting the case done, and getting paid. And I think that's up to us to change that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You poll attorneys and say, you know, go back to why'd you get into the practice? Let's not talk about, you know, your 20 years of corporate law, but why'd you get in? To help
Right.
people, right?
Yeah.
You know, because you care.
Right.
And leaning into that, I think is something that we definitely needed to do. Hopefully we're doing some stuff at the Bar Association to sort of turn the page on that narrative and sort of talk about how it's important what we do, and we should feel good about what we do, but also the public should understand we do a lot of good. And
Oh, sure. I think that putting that out there too really helps quite a bit. I mean, I've been a member of the lawyer referral service now for, I think I joined. My dad got me to join right when I passed the bar, so I think it's
85.
been
Yeah.
since 1986.
Yeah.
And um, a funny story is when I've been dealing with Donna for so many years, right? Forever. And she's such a sweet individual, but there was never really an opportunity for me to meet her face to face. It was all by phone. And it was only, I think it was only about maybe 10 years ago, maybe less, that we actually met face to face. And when she realized who I was, she went around the table and gave me a big hug because, you know, I'd known her for so long, but I'd never actually met her before. But it's important for practitioners to take advantage of what the OBA offers. They need to take advantage about what the Nebraska Bar Association offers. And I think having having that connection and knowing what's available is very important for them to actually be able to build a practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know I love all the themes here of bigger than yourself and everything. That's great. In terms of, and we talked about this a bit before we got on the recording here, um, the shift in practice, and particularly you've seen a few shifts in practice probably over the years, and now where we're headed. What do you think is important for a new practitioner who hasn't seen the past, who's just thinking about where we're going, but also you've talked a lot about the soft skills and things like that, but where do you see it going for practitioners? Probably less need for support staff, which is great, more efficient in that way, more support through listservs and online tools. But what else? I guess we talked a little bit about, you know, web hearings and things like that. Maybe thinking of practicing in some of the other counties that now are going to allow for you to, you know, to practice out there if it's just remote. Where do you see the future going?
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be more and more uniform, especially if we're going to put more technology into this. I think, and that's a good thing because I don't think the counties over the years, practice wise, have been in conjunction with one another to come up with a uniform way of practicing, so that if you want to do some work in Dodge County, if you want to do some work in another county, you don't feel like a fish out of water. I think it's going to probably go that way. And if, you know, COVID's going to change everything. COVID's going to change so much. To me, um, if a practitioner, it's so easy now to become an attorney and practice solo, than it was 10 years ago. Probably a lot easier now than 5 years ago. With all this happening, and now that we can do what we can do online, right? I think it's so much easier for somebody to get into practice, but at the same time, they still have to. They're still going to have that human connection. You know, having. I don't understand. Maybe you can tell me this. I don't understand this. How do you do a satellite office? I don't get it. I have I have this desk here, and I do work from home, and my office is about 8 minutes away near the courthouse.
Yeah.
So any given time I can get up and go down there and get what I need, right? But to do a satellite office, and it might be actually easier now to do that. But I think that's where it's going. I think more people are going to be able to get involved in practicing through technology. I think that's the way, and I think we were going that way, right? My wife is a trainer for a bank, and she's told me for years that the banks are going more and more towards doing online stuff and not having the risk of having walking into a bank. And I think that's probably going to be the same kind of thing that we're doing here, right?
Right. I mean, you can do that, and it's crazy. Nick Critelli's been doing that. So I came into my role in like 2010, went over to Des Moines, talked to Nick. In 2010, he was doing video consults. He was recording it, and he was sending the recording to the client so they could see it all. Oh, you didn't pay attention because you were in the moment. Here's a copy of the video. If you want to retain me, fine. If you don't, that's fine. But here's all the information that we went over. Here's every single document. And he was doing that back then. And now you can add that to it. And it's also kind of a CYA insurance defense. Listen, I told you all this. I told you what your deadlines were. I told you what case you had, what didn't you have. And leaning into using the technology as a solo. My question though to you, Barry, is do you think, and maybe this is something I'm going to put on the law schools here a little bit, and maybe just in general with corporate or large law firms kind of pushing people into categories, are we going to have too many solos that are one area of practice and not willing to be a bit more general, to take on different things? Do you think it's going to just be a lot of, I only do family law, I only do estate probate, I only do business?
No, I don't think so. I think the fact that technology is opening up and we can do things a lot easier is going to make it much easier for an attorney to do more than one practice. I mean, the reason I did bankruptcy so for so many years, I did 13s and I did 7s. My father was the first attorney who advertised in Nebraska, and he
right.
The Nebraska Legal Clinic is what it was called, and they did a lot of family law, but they did mostly bankruptcies. And when I was working for him, I was doing 5 to 6 Chapter 7s a week, and and Chapter 13s as well. But the reason that I'm cutting it out is because I kind of want to scale back and just, and now that I've been in practice now for 36 years, it's time to start scaling back and start working on just what I think I can really do. But I think the opposite's going to happen. I think people are going to feel more comfortable getting involved in other types of areas that have nothing to do with the practice that they're in. I think that with technology, I think you're going to have more. I think there's going to be much more solo practitioners.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
I really do. I think obviously traditional law firms have a place in this world, and they're good at what they do, and they're very efficient. But I think the fact that now what we can do online, I think is going to open the door for a lot of people. I mean, think about the people that are going to law school that are single parents, right? If we did not have this ability to do this now, and more judges opening up to do Zoom hearings and WebEx hearings, they would have a problem. They have over the years, right? They have to do daycare. They have to worry about that. If they're a solo practitioner, they have to worry about the cost of having a daycare and going to your office. And I think now it's a lot more doors opening up so that people can have their family and at the same time be able to work.
Well, the one pressure point that maybe there's a fix here is the amount of debt that they have straight out of law school and having to service that debt. And maybe that's the one push that's telling them, oh, I just want to go to a firm because at least I know what money is coming in every single week.
Oh, and I completely understand. You know what? When I first started practicing, that was a concern. But again, I will be the first to say that I was blessed. I had somebody that was already established. But the fact that I was going to work for my father in 1986 or 1985, it still wasn't necessarily enough money to barely live on, because he wanted me to build a practice. So I'd be working for him and doing his cases. But I know that he took me aside and he says, hey, I want you to build a practice. You're going to be paid for helping me, but you're going to have to start looking and hoofing and trying to find more clients. Well, at the same time, I got, I said, hey, I want to try the teaching. I like to talk. I want to try the teaching. So right after I got my license, I started looking for a part-time job to teach. Yep. And I remember calling, it was called Nebraska College of Business, and it was over where Duchenne is. They had a building, and it was a for-profit college. I had looked at Metro at possibly teaching, but I was really, really curious about this. So I went and did an interview, and this was right after I passed the bar. My dad was pushing me to join JAG because he was military. He's a colonel when he retired from the military, and he really wanted me to join JAG. And it just wasn't my thing. Yeah. And so I applied for this job. I sat down with their department head of education, and she said, yeah, we would love you to teach business law. And in the next 6 months, we're going to expand to a new program. We want to do paralegal, and we're looking for somebody to head that. Would you be interested? And it was a sweet deal. He said, you come up with a curriculum, you're practicing. And I said, the only thing that I'm asking is that you allow me to practice, because I think that's going to help the students. And they said, you go, you do what you want. And so it was absolutely the best thing I could possibly ask for, because I love to teach and I was still able to practice. My father was still able to practice too. And if him or one of the other attorneys had to sub for me for a hearing, which didn't happen really often, because the college itself was very close to downtown. So it was very easy to say, I'll be right back. So I could not have asked for a better situation. But you know what it did, Dave, a good thing that kind of global experience did is I was not very good at talking to people in public. When I was senior certified, it was very difficult for me to talk to a judge. And you're talking about cattle call. Well, before Sarpy County was, before it was renovated, to go talk to a judge for a cattle call, you had to walk down this really long path to get to the tables in front of the bench. And you pass all these lawyers, right? Very, very intimidating for somebody that's just gotten out of law school. And it was very difficult for me to talk to somebody in that realm. But talking to students and doing classes and being able to talk to them and lecturing and stuff, it absolutely turned that for me 180 degrees. It was like, now I can talk to anybody at any given time. But that kind of global experience of not just practicing, but also doing other things like teaching really helped me quite a bit in my practice. And if a student can, if somebody can do that, solo practicing, if they can get a job or they can do volunteer work to start getting their name out there, I would absolutely recommend that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea that hasn't been talked about in this series yet, is side hustle, side gig, doing something else while you're building, and something that you're passionate about that makes sense. You know, yes, attorneys are great at doing that and lawyering, but there's other things too that can
Oh, sure.
offset income, that can get your name out there in the community, that can help you in building the practice and help you become a better professional in person.
Right.
Certainly the case for me personally as well. And I do the side teaching at Metro. I was doing side work for OBA before I took this on full time. But there's just that you don't have to just sit in your office waiting for the phone call, waiting for the
Right.
email, and have that be everything and all your eggs in that basket. There are a lot of opportunities out there teaching otherwise.
Right. And I don't seriously think you can. I think getting out there and talking to people, doing community work, doing volunteer work, searching those kind of jobs that that you can do, like you said, some side gigs to get some extra income. I mean, the side benefit of that I didn't even mention from teaching was I probably represented every teacher and administrator in that college. I mean, there was no problem with me representing them. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't represent a student, but there was no problem doing that. And then, of course, they gave my name out. It was all word, it was all by word.
Yeah.
That's I got my name out for cases. It certainly wasn't by computer. And but doing that kind of work, getting your name out, doing those kind of things is really going to help a solo practitioner in a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of ways.
Yeah. What do they call it? Earned media. Is that what it
Yeah,
is when you don't pay, not paid media, but earned media?
yeah,
Yeah. Earned
absolutely.
exposure. For sure. Yeah. I keep on telling people that when you meet somebody for the first time and you're asking for a job or you're asking for business, and you lead with your hand out, it ruins the entire dynamic. It ruins the ability to even have anything happen. And so if you approach it as, I want to get to know somebody, or you're talking about your passion in something, the dynamic is so much better. The
Oh, that you
business
stand out.
flows.
You
Yeah.
stand out.
Yeah.
You stand out from people will remember. I've had people that have come in months later um, who have said, I got your name from a friend, but he said that, you're easy to work with and you call and you answer your emails and things like that. And that's the kind of attorney I need. And so I've gotten that many times. And that's, if that's going to help me, if that's going to make my cases easier to work on, being selfish, uh, that's what I'm going to do. But it actually makes the job easier too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the amount of work that I've had come in through tennis, something that completely tangential, it's amazing. I'm sure some people have bonded over, your comic book and comic hero
Yeah, actually, I've
connection.
represented since I've grown up in Omaha. I represented almost every comic book shop that had been in Omaha in the last 25 years.
Yeah, you're
And
hanging out there.
yeah,
You're
your
talking to them.
passions, you're right. Your passions, tennis, whatever it's going to do, it's going to have people say, hey, I met that guy at this event and I need some work. Maybe I'll give him a call.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Barry, we've taken up a ton of your time, more than we said we were going to. Is there anything that we missed that you want law students or potential new attorneys, or maybe even attorneys that are looking to do this, that have been in practice for a while? Any final tips or advice?
the only other thing I would say is come up with a system of your office that you feel comfortable with. If you don't feel comfortable doing a certain way of running your business and doing things, from as little as how you keep your hours to how you set up a file, you got to come up with something that you're comfortable with. Don't necessarily listen to person who says you have to do it this way. So many different ways to do it. I've been told that I'm absolutely out of my mind the way I do certain things, but you know, it gets me by. It works, and if it works, you keep doing it, right? I mean, there's everything. You know, I've always known that there's always something that I need to learn, and it's something I'm learning every day about what to do because it's not working. But it's going to be up to that person and their personality to figure out what that is.
Absolutely. I remember when I got out and told people, well, nobody's hiring me, so I'm going to do a solo practice. They told me to get a book. I usually have it right next to me. It's How to Start a Law Practice. It's from
Oh, yeah.
1992, probably it's third edition from 1987, where dictaphone and, you know, what side of the table to put it on and everything like that, and typewriter, where to put the typewriter, sort of quality. But you know, I tried to follow that, and
Oh yeah, there's certain things that's timeless, right? There's certain value in that book that you use every day.
And it was one of those things, though, at the same time, I figured out that some of the things didn't make sense for me. But so not doing everything by rote by what somebody else says, but what fits you. I think that's
Right.
really important. If you know what time of day you're most productive, and make sure you use that time, what sort of technology you like and what sort of technology you don't. You have to work, you know, are you productive at home? Are you productive at the office?
Sure.
And those different things, but making sure that you're communicating really well with your clients is key, whatever way you can
Absolutely.
get that done.
Answer your emails, answer your phone calls.
Yeah. Well, Barry, thank you so much for your time. Really do
Sure.
appreciate
You're welcome.
it.
It was a pleasure.
And I'll give them your information for any follow-up questions that they may have. Since
Okay.
you're a fond of information, you teach a whole semester on this, or you've taught a whole semester on this at Creighton. So there's a lot that we didn't even get to that I'm sure that you could offer them if they have any questions. So thank you.
No problem. Thanks a lot, Dave.
All right. Have a good day.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.